Welcome to Florida Gators Live 6. We got a packed episode today. And wow, that was weird. But we got a packed episode. We have our Ole Miss predictions, a bunch of recruiting news, including the commitment of Tremell Jones, former FSU commit, four-star quarterback. And not just is this a big commitment for him, but what he could bring to the program. But you know what? We're going to start the show off something I didn't think we were going to. We got a really good comment here. What is your favorite Gatorade? Tyler, I'm going to pass this off to you. You go first. What is your favorite Gatorade flavor?
Yeah, for me, it's orange all the way. I'm a big orange Gatorade guy. I actually like red. I feel like a lot of people don't like red, but I do. But orange definitely all the way is my first choice.
Orange is an interesting one because, each flavor, it goes with the color or the flavor it is. Orange works with both.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say mine. I'm more of a grape fan, I like grape.
Okay.
Being a Gator fan, this might be a bit controversial. I kind of like Powerade more.
Ooh, okay.
And I mean, the grape Powerade specifically, that's probably my favorite one. But grape bold, but I like them all. Yep, Tony. We don't hate any of the Gatorade flavors, man, or Powerade flavors for those who enjoy that. But let's start off with the huge news coming out a couple hours ago, an hour ago or whatever it was. Tremell Jones does commit to Florida, something that we were all really expecting to happen. Don't think it comes off as a surprise. But I think this is going to be huge for the Gators, not just because we've seen the QB room get to that third-string QB. We saw Aiden Warner against Texas and Georgia. He did not look good. So I think it helps bolster that room. But I think it also is going to help bring in some of these other big-time commits like a Solomon Thomas and Jamie French. I'm pretty sure we'll get back to that. We saw his name. I'm pretty sure I saw Steve Wiltfong pronounce it Jamie. Okay. So I think that's what we're going to go with unless I hear otherwise. But he's definitely going to help bring those two guys in, French in particular, being teammates with him. I mean, what do you think of this news and how it can affect the rest of the class?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not the kind of thing that is really going to directly impact the 2025 team because, I mean, I think we all expect this is going to be DJ Lagway's team for next year and probably the year after. 100%. So, I think it's more about the message it sends. I mean, first of all, flipping him from Florida State. I mean, obviously, Florida State, a program kind of dealing with its own problems, but I think that sends an important message within the state about kind of where the confidence level's at in Florida's program. I also think, like you said, it's important as you're trying to flesh out this class now with some of these higher end talents. I mean, Jamie French, obviously, because he's his teammate, but even these other guys that we saw on campus this week, having a quarterback is a big deal. That guy is kind of a lot of times the leader of the class and kind of the most prominent recruiter within your group of recruits. I mean, we saw that with DJ Lagway last year. DJ Lagway was incredibly vocal in trying to get guys to commit to Florida. So I think it's just a huge deal to have sort of the face of the class kind of in place, even though obviously Vernell Brown is the highest rated commit.
He definitely is. And I think we're also getting help from DJ Lagway with this class, with how he's playing, with helping with French and maybe Dallas Wilson. Don't want to go too far there, but maybe he helps with those guys. But Tremell Jones also. I think Jones for this class might have more of an impact on this class than Lagway did for his 2024 cycle. So I think that's a big thing. But looking more at Tremell Jones as a player, I was watching some of his highlights film. Lot like Lagway with a bit of mobility. He's not necessarily a run-first QB. One thing we really like with Lagway is he'll scramble off the pocket and maneuver in the pocket, but he's keeping his eyes down the field. He's looking to make that big-time pass. So that is something you really love to see out of a quarterback. Not sure about the arm strength. He does have a good touch and some nice accuracy, but I'm not sure if he can make those next-level throws that we see from a Lagway.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at his ratings, his recruiting rating, I think that kind of lines up with that. It's not an elite talent as a high school recruit. He's a solid 4-star, top 250, I think, guy, that kind of level recruit. More of a developmental project guy, which I think is fine because you've got the future. Like I said, you've got the future of the position in place. Hopefully, I mean, Obviously, if that's not the case and DJ Lagway were to leave, that's a disaster. But I think you got to operate under the assumption that that's not happening. So,
yeah, I was certainly under the impression when we got Will Griffin to commit a couple months before the season, even, I think, that he's kind of the guy that they see as the one taking the helm from Lagway. But I do still love bringing in a guy like Tremell Jones, who maybe he has like another growth spurt. He's only 6'1". 6'1's not drastically short, but Lagway's 6'3". Our former quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson was 6'4", Trask 6'5". You do probably want a taller QB. AR coming out of high school was only 6'2" and was ranked at like 199. So these guys, they're still young. They still can hit their growth spurts and take that next step to being a bigger talent.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, that's that. What's up, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights? Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. It's been an interesting day. We saw Tremell Jones commit. I mean, you're wearing the Jags jersey right now. The Jags took a brutal loss. I'm pretty sure I saw it was like the fourth largest difference in yards in an NFL game ever.
It was the biggest yardage, 475 yards. It was the biggest yardage differential in an NFL game since 1979.
Wow. I mean, that's just brutal.
You've seen worst loss in franchise history and most points allowed in franchise history.
Man. Yeah. We've seen this offense now for 2 weeks with Mac Jones, and it's just looked horrible. Honestly, it feels like you got to give more credit to Trevor Lawrence because he had this offense looking like 20 points at least when he's been playing good, so you got to give him that. Yeah. But so I feel like you ought to have higher hopes for Trevor now after looking at how bad this offense has played.
Oh yeah, and I'm like a ride or die for Trevor Lawrence, so I've never wavered in my faith there. Yeah. And so I think I kind of feel vindicated. It kind of looks like Trevor's actually been kind of getting blood from the stone with getting any success from this offense. Colts
me
suck,
too.
But we're not the Jets. That's true.
Hey,
that is
Tony,
true.
Anthony Richardson led the game-winning touchdown drive today for the Colts. People already were calling him a bust. I mean, he has less starts. He's still younger than most of the guys are going to get drafted this year. He's younger than Shedeur. Not sure about Quinn. Probably not younger than Quinn. He's younger than Dylan Gabriel.
He's like a lot younger than Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, he's like 3 years younger than Dylan Gabriel. So can't be too early to call Anthony Richardson a bust. But we're going to get into our weekly segment, our final recap from the LSU game. Much more exciting than last week. Our top 5, bottom 5. I'll let you start it out however you want this time.
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off with my bottom of my top 5 since it was a win, and we'll talk about the good things. So to me, I've got explosive plays as one of my top 5s. I think that to me, like, we knew that that's what DJ Lagway would bring to the table as part of this offense. Like, I think that was why you had hope that maybe you win the Georgia game if he stays in the second half. Why you have hope that maybe that Texas game goes at least a little bit differently, even though your defense didn't play well. I believe 7 total explosive plays in this game. Wow. A lot. Exclusive. Yeah. So 7 passing plays of more than 15 yards, 4 rushing plays of more than 10. On those passing plays, obviously one of them was 36 yards to Badger, set up the touchdown. Another 34-yarder to DK, a 23-yarder to Badger, a touchdown. And, obviously the 55-yard run from Jaden Paw to kind of ice the game at the end there. Not a lot of, I would say, great down-to-down consistency on offense yesterday for the Gators, but they had some really timely big plays.
I'll definitely be getting into the last part you said there. But my number 5 on top 5 actually is just DJ Lagway. Didn't have the mobility, so you got to give him a lot of credit for coming out there and throwing for 220-something, 30-something yards. I'm not exactly sure the number.
It was 226.
226. Okay. So give him a ton of credit for coming out there and doing that. A lot of people would probably put a lot of the game on him. He also did make some turnover-worthy plays. Maybe a better defense has like 2 picks in that game. Yeah. But he also still had those 36-yarder, the 32-yarder, 2 deep balls to Badger, 1 to DK, 2 good plays to tight ends. So I'm going to give Lagway a lot of credit. I have him number 5. What's your bottom 5, number 5?
Yeah, leading off my bottom 5, I have the time of possession differential. Florida won in spite of some really just mind-blowing numbers in this game. I mean, the fact that, you're looking at a team that only went 3 of 9 on third down, had 7 penalties for 55 yards. The time of possession obviously was the big one, though. They were outpossessed 41 minutes to 18 minutes. I mean, winning a game like that, 25 first downs to 13 first downs, just completely lopsided numbers there. Like hard to believe you scored 27 points and win by 2 scores in a game that played out that way. Obviously it didn't hurt you too bad this time around, but I think it easily could have if LSU wasn't having kind of their own issues. So that's something that can't do that again against Ole Miss. That's for sure.
You cannot. So my bottom 5 is going to start with something that could also be looked at as a positive, but I didn't want to give one specific player too much hate because we've given him a ton on this show. So I'm going to say the safety room, both of the starting safeties, Bryce Thornton and Jordan Castell, played every single snap, all 93 snaps this game. So I'm going to look at that as a negative as we don't have the depth there. I've already said we probably need to go out and get like 3 safeties in the transfer portal. The injuries there have been horrific. Recruiting, we lost a guy like Xavier Filisame, 5-star safety last year, flipped to Texas just before the cycle closed. So I'm going to say the safety room at number 5 on my bottom 5. I do hope that they can continue to play decent enough. Bryce Thornton played actually really well. Don't really remember him making any mistakes. So if you can't really remember make mistakes, I like that, and especially for a DB. Let's go to your top 5, though.
Yeah, back to my top 5. Next up, I've got Elijah Badger. I think a guy that had maybe a bit of a slow start to the year, but I think we see, especially with DJ in the game, man, they have a really good connection. And Badger just tends to get open on those deep routes that DJ likes to throw so much. And it obviously paid off last night for him. 6 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets, team highs across the board. Just continues to really impress. And again, just a bummer that it's kind of looking like the Gators probably won't have him next year. We kind of had this, we couldn't figure this out for sure, but it seems like he's out of eligibility.
So I do think we found out he has 1 year of eligibility left.
He does? Okay.
So I'm not sure how many games he played in his second season.
Okay.
That's true, because his first year, COVID year, his freshman season was a COVID season. And then his next season would have been his freshman season.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. It depends on what he did then.
Yeah.
But also you look at, he's probably gonna be getting like day 2, early day 3 draft grades. So he might not want to return. Although playing another year with a guy like DJ Lagway really could boost that stock. And what might be a really young receiver room too. So yeah, we do really want him back. Number 4, my top 5, I have Shamar James, 11 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections. Pup Howard was out coming into this game, so we really need Shamar to take another step in this game. He's kind of been not playing as well as we wanted him to play. So for him to come out in this game, really lead this young defense around him, Jada Robinson, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, all getting a ton of snaps. So for the veteran guy in the room to actually step up and make those plays, huge for him. I'm not sure if he's going to return next year as well, because we know he's a junior. Maybe he goes to draft. Maybe he returns for a senior season. Could be the leader of the defense next year that could help lead us to a playoff run. So I'm excited to see what that leads to in the future for the rest of this season and for next season, maybe the NFL.
Yeah, and I'll get kind of more into Shamar James and some other guys in a little bit, so I don't want to go too much there. But I agree. I think you're seeing a defense growing every week, and he's I think at the center of it.
Really is.
So I'll go back to my bottom 5. We've talked about it. I feel like we pick on him a lot here, and I'm not trying to do that. Yeah, it's Jordan Castell. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here. We just saw him give up a touchdown again. It's just it doesn't seem to be progressing the way you'd want to see a sophomore with as much experience as he has progressing. I think that's kind of all I'll say, and concur with you that safety remains the biggest need entering the offseason in the portal.
Yeah, so you started talking about a little bit. Number 4 of my bottom 5 is sustainable drives. I mean, whether it's untimely penalties, our first drive of the game, we start in LSU territory or near LSU territory. We end up getting a holding call and a false start, and we get to a 3rd and 13 still, and DK drops pass should have caught. But bad success, either throwing the ball, first down pass, or LSU makes a good play on the run game. And when this offense just isn't on time, on schedule, seems to drag out for maybe another drive. And I go 4 on my bottom 5. That's a play calling thing, execution. I mean, it has to be better, especially if we do want to beat Ole Miss going into next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw there's a possession. I think it was the opening drive of the game where it was like holding penalty, false start, illegal motion, and then 12 men on the field on the punt. Like, what are we doing here?
Sorry.
No,
when we got the strip sack and then the LSU lineman picked it up, we also got a holding right there on that drive. It was a big play too, which really sucked. So we would have been inside like the 25-yard line, but there was a holding. Both of those holdings were also on Austin Barber, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
He played a good game outside of that, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think there were a lot of opportunities left on the table yesterday, honestly. Like, it could have been worse than it was. But I think they squandered a lot of opportunities and need to do a better job of that moving forward. Going back to my top 5, though, of course, I got him in here too. It's DJ Lagway. Guy's undefeated as a starter in games that he finishes. And I mean, he's not perfect. He's making mistakes. Like you said, there were turnover worthy plays made in this game, but man, the talent is something. I mean, he's capable of making throws that I can probably count on one hand the amount of guys in college football who can. And he's an 18-year-old or 19-year-old true freshman. It's unbelievable. I think he's got a really bright future, and it's, I think you're going to take the good with the bad from him, and you might see some more of that bad next week against a better defense, but it doesn't change the fact that he's spectacular.
Absolutely is. So going back, actually, you already had this guy. I have Elijah Badger at 3. 6 catches, 131 yards, a touchdown. He was making some really good jump balls. Probably could have been higher. He probably could have had like 150 yards if he played a little better. I mean, 131 yards is still really good, but he could have played better. He is 208 yards away from 1,000 yards, if I'm not mistaken. If we're going to want to beat Ole Miss, he's going to need to play well. I mean, we should be FSU even if he didn't play. But I really hope we do see him get to 1,000 yards. Because we haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since like 2003.
No one got there in 2020?
No, because Pitts got injured. And Tony was at like in the 900s, and it was a short season.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, wow.
And then, no one else got it. I mean, when we were under Tim Tebow, we
didn't really have any like elite wideouts in that era.
Percy Harvin will also getting out the backfield, so.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yards,
like, he didn't get that many like targets through the air.
Yeah. So it'd probably been back when Rex Grossman, who was Mr. Tubis for this game, he was probably throwing. I can't remember. I think maybe Riedel Anthony.
Well, 2003 would have been Chris Leak, actually. That would have been Chris Leak, true freshman Chris Leak.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It may have been it was somewhere around then. So I'm not 100% sure. But I remember seeing the stat last year.
Jabbar Gaffney, maybe? Would it have been Jabbar Gaffney?
It may have been.
Yeah.
I know, because Ricky Pearsall came so close last year. Losing Graham Mertz really killed that for Pearsall. But, got to give credit to Badger. Hope he's been getting better throughout the year, as you said. So hope to see him have a strong finish to this season.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%, continues to impress. Looking at my next in my bottom 5, I've got the run defense. I mean, I don't think it was abysmally bad in this game, but a little bit concerning against a team that really had like no rushing success, so to speak of. Coming into this game. I mean, Caden Durham is a talented player, held him to 91 yards on 20 carries. Like, you can live with that. Same with 69 on 13 carries to Josh Williams. Like, it was more to me just that they started kind of ripping off runs in the middle of the game when you just like had kept them at bay for so much of the game. And it's like, how are you just like letting them run over you like this over and over again? And they kind of settled in. Ole Miss, not exactly a prolific rushing offense either. They've kind of had some issues in the backfield this year, but I just don't love to see that against a team that struggled to run the ball as much as LSU has.
Yeah, for sure. Would really love for us to improve on that. I think the bigger issue was our zone defense. I feel like I kind of get to this on the next bottom five as well. Kind of plays just break down, players lose their zone. Nussmeier did a decent job of breaking some plays loose to get out and hit his man for a first down. I don't want to get into this too much because my next point is also this. So I'm just going to say we looked like a better offense when we're running man coverage, except for when we put Derek Wingo and Mason Taylor. But outside of that, I feel like this team was playing a lot better in man. Trequez Bridges, he might be a better corner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see him against Ole Miss because I assume he's still going to play corner. But I feel like he might be a better corner than safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly possible. And if you're still going to be looking at injuries in the secondary, I mean, I think there's a good chance you see them kind of run that back again. Same lineup next week. So next up in my top five, got Jaden Baugh, who I put ahead of DJ Lagway because I think he was ultimately a little bit more impactful in this game. I mean, just, only had 6 carries in this game, but felt like a lot more just with how, how impactful he was in this game, especially with that long run at the end. Obviously, that was kind of the bulk of it. Didn't really run the ball down much at all in this game. Didn't really try to, which was weird.
No.
With, you were actually running the ball with a decent amount of like efficiency. You just kind of got away from it. But, he came through. They went back to it at the right time, and he came through with the biggest play of the game to seal it. And just an awesome play. If you watch a breakdown of it, he kind of just hit the gap and just made Ashton Stamps, the LSU corner, look pretty foolish. So really good game from him.
Absolutely. And I think another of his 10 yards came like the last play of the first quarter where he had a first down run, had the big hit. I think it was at the end of the first quarter. So it was at the end of one of the quarters. So going into that second quarter, that drive ends up stalling. But great game for Ball. My number 2 on the top 5, Trey Smack, 55-yard kick, a 49-yard kick. Didn't give up any kick returns either. I mean, we've talked a little bit of smack about him because he seems to miss the kicks in big-time situations. But last night or yesterday, he wasn't missing. I mean, so I got to give him a ton of credit for in the 55 and 49-yarder because those are kicks that if you miss a 55-yarder, you're not going to blame the kicker. I mean, you can, but like 55-yard kick, that's you win some, you lose some. So for him to make it and make the 49-yarder, he definitely deserves a spot on my top 5, and I give him that number 2 spot.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, in spite of the things we've said, like Smack's a really reliable kicker and strong leg, and like we kind of took it for granted with like the Eddie Pinheiro and Evan McPherson years having elite kicking. I think we kind of missed that a lot with like Chris Howard and Adam Hollick. I think they've got that back, even if he's maybe missed a couple that you would really like to have back. I don't think you really ever worry trotting him out there to try from 50.
No, you cannot.
But yeah, so going back to my bottom 5, I've got the third down defense. I think this was probably the biggest thing that frustrated me during this game from, in terms of a negative, like 13-24 is what LSU was on third down in this game. I mean, just a lot of conversions, just a lot of times you get them to third and long and you just let them convert, just let Garrett Nussmeier, even though they got to him, like the pressure was great. There were a lot of times that, he would just have just enough time to kind of throw a check down that would be open or they just run like a draw and you fall for it on third and long. Like that happened too, at least once. So just in general, I think getting off the field was an issue. And that's why the time of possession was so lopsided in this game. I mean, it was very much bend, but don't break. I mean, you held them to 16 points, but just, frustrating to just not be able to get off the field like they were not able to for much of that game.
Well, that's perfect. My spot was 3rd/4th down defense. I'm pretty sure LSU was at a point where they're like 10 of 15 on third downs. But then they also converted a couple fourth downs in the later half of the game that the play would break down, and the zone, as I got into earlier, it would collapse. LSU in this game had 3 drives that were resulted in a 22 minutes of time with possession. But the good thing was that those 3 drives only resulted in 6 points.
Yeah.
Very much bend, don't break defense. And I mean, honestly, the defense does that against Ole Miss. I will be very happy. So, we do hit on that 3rd and 4th down because we would like to see the offense on the field more fun. There was a point at the end of the second half and early third quarter. I was at this game. I was getting tired, kind of. I was like, oh man, this game it felt like it was taking forever because LSU was just on the field for so long. But hey, they got the stops when they needed to. Then at the end of the game, they obviously got a couple 3rd down stops, gave up a couple 4th down. So that's why it's number 2 on my bottom 5.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. Going back to my top, I kind of just hinted at it. It's the pass rush. And I mean, I think you got to credit. I mean, I was kind of going to frame this around the defensive line because I think they're the group that's really taken the biggest step forward. But I kind of want to group the whole front 7 in there together because, like you said earlier, Shamar was fantastic in this game. Those young linebackers playing in place of Pup, Aaron Childs and Miles Graham, they made a lot of plays. I think that, I look at just the way that they were able to just completely disrupt a guy who had really mostly avoided pressure this season. I mean, LSU banged up a little bit on the offensive line, lost another guy in that game on the interior, but I mean, Nussmeier had been sacked 6 times all season coming into that game, and Gators got to him 7 times. So, it really, really impressive. I mean, it's, again, I think I said this yesterday, but it's hard to imagine or hard to comprehend that we're watching the same team that just let Cam Ward operate with an hour in the pocket. Let, Marcel Reed just completely no containment at all. It was just, I think that group's taken a big step forward.
Yeah, I personally went with just 2 specific players. I went Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks. Going into the game, we said the players weren't really doing enough one-on-one to make the big plays. And it was like the linebacker blitzes, corner safety blitzes that were helping get the pressure. I mean, Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks, those 2 alone, 4 TFLs from Sapp, 2 sacks from Banks, probably also had another TFL in there. I mean, they got there by themselves, really. And then you also added on Shamar James going in and getting some sacks. George Gums having another great game. Cam James with a sack. So really, I had just Sapp and Banks. But just the whole defensive front 7 really made great plays that game. Also, honorable mention, Aaron Gates had another phenomenal game. Had a great tackle for loss on a 3rd down, I think it was. But and some decent coverage. Want to give him a shout out.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably the most encouraging sign, other than DJ Lagway. The most encouraging sign about the future of the program is just how much better those guys up front have gotten. Looking at the top of my bottom 5, number 1 on my bottom 5, we've kind of talked about this like in points, but I'll just kind of wrap it up into one major thing. To me, it's the offensive efficiency. Just not what you necessarily want to see. I mean, Lagway made some nice plays. I think you can see the talent, the potential. Obviously, Ball had that long run, but down to down, you just weren't really doing a lot. 3 of 9 on 3rd downs. Just, again, only ran the ball 17 times, so not a lot to like. You had so few plays that it's hard to even like have a full picture of what the offensive game plan was in this game because you only possessed the ball for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But you're not even 20 minutes. Yeah, not even 20 minutes.
Not even 19.
Yeah. So again, like I don't necessarily think it's indicative of larger trends, but I do think the offense struggled to do that, and then obviously just struggled to take advantage of opportunities. Recovering that fumble, I think the 34, and then you just go 8 yards backwards and punt. Just a lot of missed opportunities in this game that I don't think LSU was equipped to really make you pay for. I think it's different with Ole Miss, so I think that's just a lot to clean up on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, mine goes hand in hand with what you just said. I had specifically not running the ball enough. What did we have? 10 carries or not 10, 14 carries that entire game. Ball had 6. I'm pretty sure Jackson had 6 and Montreal had 2.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It was 14. They're counting 3 team carries here. Yeah. So yeah, 14 total like handoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we need to run the ball way more against this LSU defense that stat-wise looks like they haven't defended the run really well, but maybe like because of QBs. But we still need to run the ball a lot more, especially when you have a great back in Jaden Ball and you had Jacoby Jackson, who still had a pretty decent average with his 6 carries, about 4 or 5, I'm pretty sure. And I feel like it's more identity of this team and put a little bit less pressure on DJ to make those 3rd and long plays, which she did make a couple of. So there is that. But we just can't be relying on someone who, to me, Lagway didn't look, what would you say, like 80, 85% he was at? Because he didn't run the ball at all.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to him post-game last night, and he kind of just like, I mean, he didn't say it, but he kind of hinted that he was clearly not at 100%, and just kind of was talking about how, he was able to stay in the pocket because the pocket was protected. I mean, look, he had to step up in the pocket and avoid a defender to make that huge throw to Badger that set up that touchdown, so
yeah.
I wouldn't say he looked like extremely limited. It's just hard to know because him running the ball was just such not a component of the game plan. But yeah, I think 80-85% probably that sounds about right. I mean, I think you'd hope that against Ole Miss, you're able to see a little bit more mobility out of him.
Yeah, I definitely think if we want to beat Ole Miss, we're going to need some of his mobility, especially Ole Miss probably has 3 pass rushers who would be the best pass rusher for LSU.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to need some of that. But before we get into the next segment, I want everyone, make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with everyone you know. We're trying to expand, bring you guys more content with the entire Voice of College Football universe, really. I know we're live on the Ole Miss channel right now as well. So go check out the Ole Miss channel if you want any extra college football content in general and just any other Voice of College Football channel. But the next thing we want to get into, what is DJ Lagway's ceiling? Maybe I'm a fan, big fan, obviously. So I'm going to have glasses are blinding to him, really. So I'm going to say he has the potential to be like the best QB in the country. We talked about it last night going into next season. What QB would you rather have than DJ Lagway? And like the best answers we could give was Arch Manning and like Nico. I mean, I feel like that ceiling's pretty high.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like the talent is, I mean, the arm talent is just unbelievable. Just the power and touch, like it's just hard to like Florida hasn't had a guy that throws the ball like that since I've been watching them. And I'm not sure they ever have, to be honest with you. Like, I think that he can do so much. And I think it's pretty obvious right now to me that I don't want to say uncomfortable in the offense, but I think it's pretty clear he's still kind of learning the ropes to a degree.
Yes.
I think the entire playbook, I think, seems a little bit limited with him. And I think he'll grow in that regard. I mean, he's a true freshman who wasn't supposed to be starting this year. But I think, I mean, so the only hang up is I think that, you could worry that maybe, this doesn't become, the complexity here doesn't grow a lot. And there's not a lot more like elements to his game. And we kind of just end up having a deep ball artist guy.
Yep.
And which wouldn't even be, I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing that ever happened. But I mean, that's like the floor. And I mean, the ceiling is, I agree with you. I think the ceiling is sky high. I think the ceiling is a Heisman Trophy. I think the ceiling is potentially first overall pick in the draft. Like, I mean,
yes,
he's among the more special college quarterbacks I've seen as a true freshman in a very long time.
That's the thing. He's just a true freshman. Going back to him being like a deep ball artist, we do need to see him check down a bit more. He did make a nice check down on what was one of the holdings, the second holding call after the fumble, where then it got taken back. But there was the probably most likely interception he almost threw to where the linebacker was kind of hidden and went for it and probably should have picked it off, but didn't, where he had Badger wide open on a check down drag route, which would have been a explosive play because that probably would have gone for like 20 yards. So then that adds to the stats, which also make the deep ball look better. even though it was a check down. But I mean, his ceiling, you say, first pick in the NFL draft. When you look at the QBs who are the best in the league, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, obviously probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now, has that bazooka, good mobility. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I mean, those are probably the 3 best QBs in the NFL right now. They all have really good mobility with big arms where they can throw it down the field. And, I mean, they're smart players, obviously. So that seems like if you can get DJ Lagway, his football IQ up, which I'm not even saying is bad, but like with the downs, if you can develop that, I mean, he already has the makeup of what you would see from a winning player. Won us that LSU game. You talked about it, 3-0 in games he starts and finishes, which, you know, you can talk about winning wins and losses being a QB stat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like you look in the NFL, most of the best QBs are winning football games.
Yeah.
So being able to win the game against LSU, winning us that Kentucky game, giving us the lead against Georgia. We don't know how we would have finished, but he did give us the lead. And, I mean, similar to that LSU and Kentucky game, took early leads and then held them mostly, and went on to win those games, obviously.
Yeah, and like I hate to point to intangibles just because it feels like kind of hackish, but I mean, this kid's got him. Like, I mean, this kid, like the leadership, the moxie, like just looking at him standing while everyone's running out of the tunnel, like, you know, greeting everyone, firing everyone up. I mean, this is rare stuff. Like, this is like, I'm not trying to be like, you know, hyperbolic here, but like, this is the kind of thing you just don't normally see from a guy who's a true freshman and is still figuring his own stuff out, figuring out the playbook, figuring out his own, you know, strength and conditioning, figuring out, you know, just the college lifestyle. You rarely see guys just come in and have the ear of the team the way it seems that DJ does. It's really special. And I think, you know, it's hard not to feel even for someone like me, who is a extreme Billy Napier skeptic and is not sitting here like 100% convinced we're all fine. You know, it's the future's bright. Everything's going to be fantastic, but it's hard not to feel good. And at least, you know, cautiously optimistic when you look at what you've got in DJ Lagway.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a true freshman, and he's leading this team like you would see a senior quarterback lead a team, or a veteran player, a team captain, really. I mean, he's basically the team captain. I mean, what player would you put above him leadership-wise? I mean, Grant Mertz, maybe. I mean, even when
Shamar seems like a big-time leader. I'll say that.
That's true.
Maybe Austin Barber.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with offensive linemen.
But they're quiet, but they also seem like they're, you know, pretty like kind of anchors of the, no pun intended, but like sort of anchors of the offense. So,
but like that might be DJ's best attribute, his leadership. Which, when you're looking at a kid that has probably the best D ball in all of college football, that being above the deep ball, I mean, it's hard to see him. I mean, I don't want to predict him to be like too high. You know, I don't want to predict him to be that first-round pick. But it's hard to see him fall off a bit because you can tell from his leadership, he's a hard worker. I mean, as long as the team is developing, the coaches are developing him right, he should be that first-round draft pick, first overall draft pick, and hopefully be a really good player in the NFL.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, he seems to love this staff. You know, he seems to love Billy Napier and the staff. You know, had a lot of praise for Billy and Ryan Barry, the quarterback's coach. Sort of, you know, after the game last night, was asked about Strickland's statement and the vote of confidence, and just talked about how excited he was that the staff was staying. And again, like I said, I have my concerns, but there's something to be said for the fact that the face of the program, which is what he is as a true freshman, the face of the program wants him to stay. So
they absolutely love his loyalty. I mean, in this college football world where players will transfer just for one small reason or flip their commitments for a small amount of money, maybe. So you got to love when you have a player like DJ Lagway and love when he's on your team.
Yeah.
And chat, I mean, this is a really fun show. We're about to get into maybe the most fun part of it, where we're talking about the future of this team. Again, I mean, the future really kind of all that matters right now.
Yeah.
our Ole Miss predictions, I still don't even know. Chat, what is your guys' predictions for this Ole Miss game? Because I have an idea of what I want to pick in mind, but it's really tough because, it's the homer part of me. I know, obviously, you just said it. You're not the biggest on Billy Napier, so I bet it's a lot easier for you to pick against him. So, it's going to be really interesting when we get there. But let's talk about the momentum this team can carry going into 2025 if we do win this Ole Miss game. If we do, we probably do win that FSU game, hopefully a bowl game. I'm going to let you get into this first.
Yeah, so I'll just say, first of all, huge recruiting weekend this week, with LSU in town, had a lot of big time guys that we'll get into. But I will say, when I saw that visitors list, which was star-studded, I was a little skeptical, to be honest, because I was like, okay, you're getting all these visits, that's cool, but what happens if you just don't play well and get killed at home, and will that actually lead to anything? Well, you got the win in front of an electric atmosphere, and now at least one one of those has fallen into place with Tremell Jones committing earlier today.
Yes.
Now we're going to see a few more, I think, potentially, guys that it seems like are trending. Some guys are trying to flip, but I would also say some guys that it seems like to me are trending. Stephon Shivers, 3-star defensive lineman. Seems like there's a lot of momentum for the Gators there. I'd say that if I had to guess, that would probably be who I would think would be the next commitment to drop. Would you agree with that?
I heard he still wants to take his visit to Louisville or Vanderbilt. I can't remember which one it was. So he might wait a little bit longer.
Okay.
If I had to guess on the next commitment, probably Daniel Pierre-Louis, offensive line flip or commit to FSU. We'll get into that a bit later, obviously. But I'd probably guess Lewis. And so looking forward to next season, the transfer portal, I feel like this was also a big win for looking at players who are going to want to come in, especially wide receivers. I've already been hearing a ton of names and a ton of players who do want to transfer and come in to play with, we've already said, maybe the best QB in all of college football in DJ Lagway. But then you also look at the defensive line. 7 sacks. We talked about some of the defensive line players we had visit. They're going to want to see that, and they're going to be like, yo, they had more sacks in that game than LSU's given up all season. That's a player who I want. That's a coaching staff that I want to develop me. Why can't I be a part of that, And, Caleb Banks, Cam Jackson, he took the invite to the Senior Bowl. So we're going to hope that he can go into the NFL and prove to be a big-time player, which showing that you can get players into the NFL does help a lot with recruiting.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, talking about the momentum you have the opportunity to build here at the end of the year, I think that, like I said, I've been pretty outspoken. I'm critical of Billy. I still have questions about Billy, but I do think you have a really potentially interesting opportunity here in these last few weeks because, while it's not the standard to lose 5 games in a season, which they already have, I think, especially if you can find a way to win on Saturday. I think beating FSU, you just kind of have to assume that's a given because all the good feelings are out the door if you lose to 2-9 FSU. Can't let that happen.
Hey, FSU might be in a defensive battle. Both FSU and Charleston Southern, neither have scored more than 20 points or 21 points in a game this season. Maybe this is this
would be the funniest thing ever.
2 Iowa teams from last season going against each other. Yeah. But look at the momentum. Hey, maybe this momentum, like George says, leads us to winning 2 straight national championships under DJ Lagway and him being the undisputed GOAT of college football.
Love the energy, George. You know what? I'm sure. Look, the guys that if you land 2/3 of the big name guys who were on campus for that game yesterday, in addition to a good transfer portal class, maybe. Even if Billy is not the best coach in the world, you're going to have an extremely talented roster at that point.
We talked about needing to run the ball more and the play calling just not working really. Maybe hiring an OC that's been rumored to be happening does help that a lot. Also could help with other things, fine-tuning things. I wouldn't say penalties were an issue because we're still one of the lowest penalized teams in the SEC. We only had a couple penalties against LSU, but they always are very poorly timed penalties.
Yeah.
And that's really the big problem. So maybe if you can keep Napier away from having to call plays, if he's calling plays, maybe Russ Callaway is. But I mean, that's probably a bit more pressure on him helping Russ. First time calling plays for an SEC team, obviously. So that's something that needs a lot of help, I would assume. So if you can hire an OC, maybe Billy can work with just the fine-tuning those big-time penalties, those mishaps on special teams. And I mean, hey, beat Ole Miss, beat FSU, win your bowl game, 8 wins. I mean, if you said going into the season that Florida would win 8 games this year, most people would have probably been pretty happy with that, like with how the schedule looked. So I think I would be really happy with that. You would have 2 top 25 wins and 2 rivalry wins in that stretch as well. So, I mean, I'd see it probably being the preseason, assuming the portal doesn't hurt us and it helps us. That would probably be a preseason top 10 team, top 15 team. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say top 10, maybe not, but I could see top 15, certainly ranked. I mean, certainly talking about a ranked team if you finish 8-5 with a bowl win.
See it all the time with see all the time with like Texas and USC. They'll start the season like because of their transfers and everything like that in the top 25, even after like a 6
what we're kind of setting up for here, what we could be potentially setting up for here is kind of like the Tennessee special under Butch Jones. If you know, remember what I'm talking about, where they like started off really rough, ended the year with all kinds of momentum, and then would somehow be like number 12 in the preseason top 25, even though they went 8-5 the year before. That's kind of where I think Florida could be at here, because at the end of the day, if you like beat Ole Miss and you beat FSU convincingly and you win a bowl game, because I would assume you're not going to have serious opt-outs in a bowl game because you don't really have a lot of draft prospects on this team. And assuming none of those big names hit the portal. So you probably got to like their chances in a bowl game. So if you can get that kind of momentum and go 8-5, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, getting absolutely demolished by Miami was probably a bit of a outlier, or at least not representative of what this team was at the end of the season.
I think you could. So we talked a lot about the bye week in previous shows being where the team took that next step. You could kind of see it in the Texas A&M game, offensively at least. I mean, they start Billy Napier switching QBs out every drive. I mean, the QBs didn't get going until the fourth quarter, where they did score like unanswered. And I mean, a wide receiver slipping is probably a difference between that being a 1-score game. I mean, we still lose, so that's obviously a loss is bad. But, I mean, maybe the team improved after that Miami game. Maybe that's what woke them up. Maybe it wasn't the bye week. And hopefully we don't have a similar situation because we do play Miami, I assume, in week 1 next year.
I don't know. I think it's later in the year. I believe it's like in week like 3 or something like that.
So you might be looking at the like online schedule. That's not the like actual schedule. It hasn't been made yet. We know the opponents, but we don't know the order.
They haven't set the date for that game though.
No. I'm going to assume it's week 1 because this one was also week 1.
Got it.
Maybe they try to play it in week 0 like we did in 2019. But, I mean, a big win against Miami in week whatever, or whether we play in week 0, week 1, or week...
Doesn't matter.
I assume they're going to be before. That would be the win that boosts you into that title talk, playoff talks. I mean, they'll be in playoff talks probably a little bit. Maybe like a couple people will have them in their top 12 or so. But you beat Miami... That's when it's like, okay, I mean, they'd have the best win early on, I'd assume. So you also have to put them there for if you look at it that way. But then, I mean, the way you beat Miami, you'll be talking about maybe Lagway being in the Heisman talks. I mean, hopefully this defense continues to get a ton of pressure and look and be one of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you could pretty easily sell me on all those things being possible because you're going to return. I mean, again, unless you just have portal devastation, which I think would completely throw cold water on this whole plan to keep Billy Napier, because it's all centered around this core, retaining this core that he's built, which is a pretty talented core. Even though you haven't necessarily been recruiting at like the elite level that you hoped you would be when you hired Billy Napier, it still raised the ceiling of the talent that you're acquiring.
DJ personally,
I mean,
Near do I.
I think there's something to that. I think I just, listening to him talk post game, like I've covered this team for a while. I've listened to like post game press conferences for a while, like listen to quarterbacks talk. He definitely just has an energy and a confidence to him that not many guys carry, and certainly not many guys that Florida's had in the last 10 or so years.
So when I was on my way home last night, one of the best things I heard during his interview with Billy Napier, they were asking about play calling and who called the touchdown run that ball had. So they came out in a formation that DJ Lagway calls the play based on the front. So, I mean, Lagway was the one calling that play. So maybe he has a really good understanding of how to read a defense, which, I mean, if he's a freshman and knows how to read a defense already, like an SEC level defense, I mean, man, we could win a lot of games.
And I think he throws with like a lot of anticipation too. Like I think he's really good at just placing the ball, not where the guy is, but where he's going to be. And I mean, again, it's just the talent and the touch that he has, in addition to just the straight up, like the strength, just the arm strength. Like it really is tantalizing. Like, it's like, what can this guy do when he's actually comfortable within the offense and you're running a system that's completely optimized and geared towards what he's able to do? Because that's not really what you're seeing right now. You're seeing a true freshman sort of just learn on the fly and kind of, fly by the skin of his teeth, and it's working.
Well, we're obviously ready to make our predictions for 2025. So way too early predictions for that season. So I have us winning the championship. What about you?
Yeah, I think you got to say at least SEC title and college football playoff semifinal. I think that's like the baseline expectation.
Basically, championship or bust. No, but
yeah,
that was fun. And I mean, we're about to talk about something that throughout the season really hasn't been fun until this past week. I mean, we're going to talk about recruiting. Let's get this comment first. I can't believe how much fun it is to watch the Gators defense again. Good job, everybody on the team.
Brother, it's been at least 5 years since I could say I've had fun watching the Gators defense. At least 5 years.
I mean, yeah, we go back to the UCF game where we started getting sacks. Then it started to pick up, and now we get 7 sacks, more than anybody and LSU had given up. I mean, the Swamp was rocking. I mean, I hope unfortunately, it's a noon game, which may also be good for us, like in this fact that Ole Miss might be sleepy. They might not be woken up for it, because I know our team. I have a good feeling our team will. I feel like that's safe to say. If you look, I mean, if you're a booster, you have season ticket holders, they're doing a deal to where boosters can get tickets for $30 for this game. They're really trying to sell out this noon game. Hopefully the student section shows up. I mean, I think they will, especially Ole Miss will probably be inside the top 10 going. I don't know. Georgia might jump them. They'll jump BYU.
Georgia's ahead of them in both polls, which is kind of insane to me. Yeah, they were ahead in the coaches and AP by 1 spot.
Oh, I'm talking about the playoff poll. Wasn't Georgia? Weren't Georgia was 12th, weren't they?
Yeah, sorry. I'm saying now, like I'm saying, so if the college football playoff poll goes in line with what the coaches and AP did, they had, because both those polls for today that came out today had Georgia ahead of Ole Miss.
And Ole Miss was 11.
No, it was like Georgia 8, Ole Miss 9, or something like that.
Okay, so I mean, if we have a top 10 team coming into the Swamp, DJ Lagway alone sells out the Swamp. I mean, that place should be rocking. Hopefully the team brings it, and hopefully we can pull off an upset. But
yeah, I mean, it'll be fun to see.
It will be. Maybe the second best game of the weekend, because Indiana Ohio State top 10 matchup.
Is that game day? I assume. Is that where game day is going? Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, that game's also at noon, because we already talked about it last night, or I didn't talk about it with you, but the time schedule. It was a big topic last week, but I think it's probably the second biggest game of the week. I think there's like a big game in the Big 12, like Arizona State, maybe. I can't remember who they play.
Colorado? Do they play Colorado?
No. Colorado plays Kansas, I'm pretty sure.
Ooh, that is interesting. That
might be the
most. I think Kansas and Florida are the two teams that are both playing the least like their record reflects right now.
Yeah, Colorado plays Kansas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Kansas wasn't really even – honestly, Kansas wasn't really even that bad. Even, they were losing their games.
Yeah,
but
they were close games.
I remember the West Virginia game. They lost. They had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, and there was like a 2-hour weather delay, and it just sucked the life out of Kansas. And West Virginia was able to take the lead with like 35 seconds left.
Yeah, they were just making a lot of boneheaded mistakes. Like Jalen Daniels had a lot of turnovers, and they've just tightened that up, honestly, the last few weeks. Like they're just cleaned up the issues, and they're winning games now. Crazy how that works.
Arizona State hosts BYU.
Ooh, okay.
And Big 12
the
standings.
devs are good. The devs are fun.
Oh yeah, they are. I mean, Cameron Scadaboo. Thank God I have him in fantasy. So, I mean, Big 12 standings: BYU 6-1 in conference play, Colorado 6-1 in conference play, Arizona State 5-2 in conference play, and Iowa State 5-2. It's probably going to be those 4 teams. 2 of those teams. I don't know who's going to make it, man. I assume the winner of Arizona State BYU makes it because Arizona State plays Arizona for the rivalry game in Arizona. Not good at all.
I think it would probably be the winner of that game versus Colorado, assuming Colorado wins out.
Because Iowa State is the other team. Iowa State plays Utah and Kansas State. Iowa State, if they beat Kansas State, I'm not sure the Big 12 tiebreakers. If it's common opponent and Iowa State has a win over Kansas State, Colorado lost to Kansas State. But Colorado would also have to lose to Arizona State. Yeah, we talked about that. But I don't know. The Big 12 is fun. None of those teams are going to win the playoff game.
No, they'll get killed. Like I don't think any of them are even that good, but it's exciting.
It's exciting. Unless like one of them faces like, I mean, Notre Dame even looks really good now, so I'm not going to say.
Yeah, they really do. I think they're like the most quietly competent and improved team in the country.
Florida versus Ole Miss will be standing room only. Yeah, the recruits, they're not even going to have seats. I mean, at this pit rate.
Yeah, like I don't know if you see 90K for that noon game, but it's gonna. I mean, it'll be good. It'll get there. I don't know if you see 90K at kick. It'll probably get there.
Game's going to be personal for DJ and Billy because everybody was calling for Lane Kiffin to be our coach. We're going to put a stop to that talk.
Don't disagree. I mean, I think Billy is definitely aware of the Kiffin discourse, but I don't know how he couldn't be.
If Billy beats Kiffin, does he get extended past 2026? One way I could see an extension is if it lowers the buyout.
Yeah, maybe like a reworking, like a restructuring. Yeah. I don't think a straight up extension. They're not gonna bump the buyout higher than it currently is. I can tell you that much.
Very true.
Yeah.
But let's get into this fun recruiting talk now. I mean, I'm keeping an eye on Twitter just in case anything else pops. That's what I've been doing after this whole show because we don't know when the next commit could happen. But first, we already talked about Tremell Jones. Actually, I have my phone, not my notes. We already talked about Tremell Jones committing and the momentum he can bring to maybe help us get one of these commits. Let's start with the 5 stars. Obviously, the most fun people to talk about. Let's start with his teammate, Jamie French. When I was watching Tremell Jones' film, obviously the player that was standing out, probably even more than Tremell was French. I mean, really good speed. His good speed, good jump balls. I mean, obviously this is high school talent, and I'm not a talent evaluator, but I mean, when I look at him, he's someone that I want to see on my team.
Yeah, I mean, good size, 6'1", 185. Believe he plays high school basketball too. So like, just a tremendous athlete. And I think Sark knows how to find athletes. He does, especially on offense. He
honestly does look a lot like someone I'd see playing for Texas.
Yeah.
Like when I was watching it, I was like, man, I can really see this guy playing at Texas. And I mean, who knows if he's going to flip from Texas? Seem like the 2 biggest reasons he would flip to Florida from Texas is because he wants to stay closer to home and like playing in Tremell Jones going to Florida also being your teammate, but also DJ Lagway. He said that, like, what's the biggest reason that Florida is still in it? He said was DJ Lagway. So we got to hope that Lagway does find a way to help us get him to flip. Maybe they got to have like a meeting or something, Lagway can go and have a meeting with him and be like, hey, ooh, I like what you do there. I could see myself hitting you on that fade route for a touchdown. I mean, against Texas in the swamp next year. I mean, how electric would that be?
No, it'd be awesome, and especially because I think receiver. I mean, we'll see exactly how big of a need receiver ends up being, but I think you got to assume you're going to see a little bit of attrition there in the offseason. So I think getting guys like if you could get Jamie French and Vernell Brown, like those are two guys who are probably going to make an instant impact in some way. I mean, that would be pretty spectacular.
Cannot forget about Vernell Brown, already committed, so it's like, so it kind of feels like it wears off a bit. He is a 5-star though. If Vernell Brown was committing right now, the Gator fans would be going crazy. There'd probably even be some saying extend Billy at that point. But continue on the receivers. Dallas Wilson, Oregon commit. From what I've heard, it's a really weird recruitment with him. I mean, he's maybe a comparison I've heard a lot with him. George Pickens. He's kind of that bully ball wide receiver. There was a clip of him that went around on Twitter of him just absolutely bullying and run blocking, which, hey, with our run game, that's really good for us. And Badger got criticized for his run blocking against Georgia. So getting someone like Dallas Wilson, who isn't afraid to go and make that block, and he's still an elite receiver too.
Yeah, I think he's the highest rated. I think of the 3 5-star, the one that Florida has, and then Jamie French, and Dallas Wilson. I think he's the highest rated, I believe, of the 3 that Florida's pursuing.
Yeah, like 13th.
I mean, yeah. So would be tremendous. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I kind of am less bullish here than I am elsewhere. Like, I think if you're gonna get one of these really good receivers, it's probably going to be Jamie French. I think that seems to be. I mean, like, I think there is legitimate smoke when it comes to Jamie French. It really does sound like I think Florida it's probably still, I would say, an uphill battle from what it sounds like, but I think there's very real momentum on Florida's side. I haven't heard that quite as much with Dallas, so we'll see. But I mean, I think the fact that you've got a guy like that even coming to town this close to the end of the season, I think it says something for sure.
I don't want to get too much into it because this isn't confirmed, but some rumors I've heard Dallas Wilson. It's not necessarily the recruitment, but there's some like personal stuff happening. I can't really get too much into it because also this might not be true. So
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about for sure. I mean, I don't want to speculate about stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what ends up.
Let's say like that George Pickens comparison is like a pretty thing that goes around with him. It feels like so. I mean, as a talent, you'd love for him to come to Florida. Let's look at maybe the most likely of the 5 stars. I mean, French seems like a lot of smoke, but Solomon Thomas.
Yeah.
He probably is he was probably the last thing keeping or Tremell Jones was probably the last thing keeping him committed to FSU. It feels like it's just a matter of time before he decommits from FSU. I think he said he wants to wait to see who they hire. But I mean, I feel like it might be more of an uphill battle for FSU than it is for Florida or LSU. Obviously, we talked about it yesterday a bit. The 2 teams that he was looking at the most that could flip him is Florida and FSU. Florida and UF. LSU. Oh my goodness, I cannot speak. Sorry. LSU and Florida. And Florida beating LSU on her home turf. Really good sign of it. So, and then I don't know if it's like a money thing. I don't know if he'd go to FSU for money necessarily. Feels like if there's just a money thing, he'd probably be committed to someone like Georgia or somewhere like Alabama. So that does give me a bit of hope that it might be more of a connection thing. So. Yeah,
I mean, it would be huge if you get Solomon Thomas. I mean, the caliber of interior offensive linemen that you really have, Florida hasn't really been able to get in quite a while. So, I look at it like, all Jacksonville guys, him and Tremell Jones and Jamie French, they're teammates. He plays for Reigns, a different school in Jacksonville, but obviously that connection they all have to each other. I've heard some things with him about, family wanting him a little closer to home. Gainesville is certainly closer to Jacksonville than Tallahassee is.
That is for sure.
It is very much it's a good receiver name. I mean, it's similar to Dallas Baker, I guess, but it just kind of sounds right.
I just had what I was going to say, and I kind of forgot it right there. I made a joke yesterday about I don't want Austin. I want making a joke at Texas. I don't want Austin. I want Dallas, and I worded it differently. But I made it in front of someone whose name is Austin. And I didn't even think about that. And it kind of rubbed off wrong.
Nice.
So, I mean, George, he thinks Solomon is definitely going to be a Gator. I remember what I was going to say. Do you remember who the last 5-star offensive lineman Florida recruited was?
God, please don't tell me it's still Martez Ivy.
It's still Martez Ivy.
God, dude, that's so bad.
It is.
That is so bad. But
we've gotten
I knew for a while that was the case. I was hoping there was someone I was forgetting, but nope.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've gotten close with guys like Samson Okunalola, who ended up going to Miami, and Francis Mauigoa, who also went to Miami.
And Jordan Seaton, too.
Jordan Seaton, he went to Colorado. And now we talked about it, how it looked like Dion might be leaving Colorado, but now it looks like he's staying. So I assume Seaton's going to stay at Colorado then, too. So,
especially because they're just about to flip Julian Lewis, it looks like.
Well, they might. They also looks like they're going to flip an offensive lineman from USC. But let's but we can definitely hope that we do finally get one in Solomon. I know Jason Zandamela, who transferred. I mean, he's a freshman this year, so I kind of consider him
it was like a Grimsley kind of transfer, right?
Yeah,
like
Grimsley
signed. Yeah.
And DeAndre Robinson, who went to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So there's those guys. And Zandamela, I think one of the services had him as a 5-star. So maybe you can count that, but I mean, we look at composite, so that's how I look at composite at least.
Yeah, I agree.
But that maybe the least talked about. I had someone ask, wait, did this guy even show up? Naeem Offord, cornerback, committed to 5-star, committed to Ohio State. It looked like a lot. He was going to flip to Auburn. I'm pretty sure he even got projections to flip to Auburn. But then I'm pretty sure I saw last night someone say that he named Ohio State, Florida, and Oregon as like a final 3 for him, and he's going to make his decision. Which, I mean, when you have someone who's committed to you, say, that's going to be my final 3 I'm going to make a decision on, usually doesn't sound good. Feels like he's just trying to get more money from Ohio State. Very possible. But it seems like he's kind of been shipping himself out to other programs. Like Auburn, their recruiting class might go down a lot from the top 3 spot it was, like us last year. But I wouldn't project him to go to Florida. I haven't seen anything that says he's going to go to Florida.
Yeah.
I just know if we're in that top 3, but when you look at the guy we're facing, Oregon, Phil Knight, he's just going to throw money at the situation. And if it is just like a money thing, I don't really think he's going to be a Gator.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a ton to add here. I'll just like kind of concur that like I haven't heard anything. Like from everything I've heard, this sounds like a guy that Florida's just not really in a significant position to land. So anything else would kind of surprise me at this point. But I got to respect that they're going for moonshots here at the end of the cycle.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, we could get a surprise. And with all the momentum, maybe like if we do flip Solomon and French, I mean, I remember when Tim Tebow committed, we got Brandon Spikes. I don't remember. I saw clips of it. And they asked Brandon Spikes, why did he commit to Florida? Because, hey, Tim Tebow went there. So, I mean, recruiting's a lot different now than it was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So, 19 years ago. But
for Tebow, 19.
Yeah. But maybe we do get, I want to say lucky, but maybe we do get something happen there. So the first 4-star we were going to talk about was Jones, but obviously that already happened. We'll go back to Auburn. Tarvis Dice, 4-star offensive line commit. He would be Napier's 3rd highest rated based on the current rankings. They can obviously change. But he would be the 3rd highest ranked offensive lineman that Florida has brought in under the Napier sale regime. So it would be a nice gift for us, especially when you look at the other 2. Roger Kearney's moved inside, so not even a tackle. And Fletcher Westfall's a bit more developmental than other guys in his ranking area. So Dice really love to get a guy like him.
Yeah, I mean, I think would be huge because I think we continue to say, like, even though they've actually, I think the offensive line's played pretty well this year, I would still say that recruiting and development along the offensive line has been a weakness of this staff to this point, especially given that it was kind of pitched as a strength going into the whole endeavor. But yeah, I mean, I think, with these Auburn guys they're trying to flip, like, to me, I think it's a pretty simple case they're trying to make, which is like, who's the SEC program with a lame duck coach now. I mean, I think it's really that simple. Like
the opposite of last year.
Yeah. So, I think, it would be a huge get. And I think you got to feel better about a battle with a team like Auburn or even with Solomon Thomas, a team like Florida State, than you do when you're going toe to toe with Ohio State and Oregon.
Mm-hmm. I know Auburn, they just had another highly rated 4-star, like top 50 player, like a couple of services time as a 5-star, Jared Smith, getting projections to flip to Ole Miss. Like that's another highly rated player that they might lose. And like Deuce Knight, 5-star quarterback who just committed to them, not getting projections to flip to Ole Miss, but a guy who's from Mississippi who might also flip to Ole Miss. I mean, you just got to go and take what you can from this Auburn team. And there's another guy who I didn't even put on our list, Malik Autry. He didn't visit. Also haven't heard anything about. We talked a little bit about him last night, but who's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if we do see some very late stuff happen with, and he ends up being a Gator at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're seeing them put the full court press on for so many of these guys. And I mean, you're not going to get them all, obviously, but I think if you could pull, I think Solomon Thomas is probably the 5-star that I would say I feel best about the Gators landing right now. If you could pull him, if you get, lucky with French, and then you land some of these, guys like Tavares Dice or Autry, like, you could salvage probably not a top 10 class. Well, I guess depending on if you get 2 5-stars, maybe, but probably more realistically, probably more like a fringe top 15-ish class.
So I was hearing that the class probably be around the size of 16, but I feel like recruiting has gone. I think I'm leaning it might be actually closer to 20 though. With the success, it probably has had a bit more success than some were expecting. Those who I talked to and everything, so it could. I've heard some people say they think it could get to like near 20. So it would maybe be just outside that top 10, but like a really high average. Yeah. But if you're going to go after the portal, that's kind of what you want.
Which I almost like, I still think you need to do that at like a few key positions like safety and stuff. But I almost think like if you really can retain this core and you can go out here and land some of these 5-stars, like maybe you don't need to be insanely aggressive in the transfer, like Ole Miss level aggressive in the transfer portal. Like maybe you don't need to do that. Like maybe you just need to do that, like really roll out the red carpet for like a couple guys here and there. Like whoever the Caleb Downs of this portal cycle is, do that. You know what I mean?
I was about to say Ohio State, like they went and got Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs. I think they also got like another offensive lineman from San Diego State. So they got like 2 real big names and a couple smaller guys to help fill out depth. If we can get some of these 5-stars, that's maybe what we might need to do. Maybe go get our Caleb Downs. Probably won't get someone that level, but someone who can fill that role that Ohio State did with him for us. So I mean, I'd love to see it. Obviously.
But again, it's like if you're willing to throw some money around and you don't necessarily have portal needs at 15 different positions, like maybe you can afford to go all in on 1 or 2 like really elite portal guys. And maybe that's the better strategy than, trying to go portal like 15 guys and remake this roster. Cause I'm not like, even though I think there's holes, I'm not sure this roster like needs remaking.
No,
I think it needs a boost here and there.
I definitely agree. Next side we're going to get into just decommitted like 2 weeks ago. The 4-star defensive lineman, Joseph Mbachu. I hope I didn't horribly mispronounce that.
I think that's close.
Yeah, it's close enough. Oh wow, that was okay. But he took another visit to Florida, decommitted like 2 weeks ago. Had a lot of talk about Auburn and Texas. Obviously, he committed to us once. He obviously had something he liked about Florida, and then that's 2 weeks ago. We weren't really doing the best, but I mean, now he just saw us. He took a visit, just do really well against LSU. Had 7 sacks. He has seen the development on the defensive line. High upside guy. He's another one of those players that has only been playing football for so long. So someone that you can really develop. And if you're getting some of these other defensive linemen, someone that you can let sit on the bench for a year or 2 to become hopefully a great player for Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I think with a guy like this, it's kind of just as simple as like, it looked like Billy was guaranteed to get fired and now he's not.
Yeah.
And that changes things. I mean, guys don't want to sign up for what they think is going to be a sinking ship.
No.
I mean, like, whether you think it was a good decision or not, there's a reason Scott Strickland made the statement that he did and made it when he did. It was a signal to recruits. It was a signal to potential assistant coaches, because I think we assume there's going to be some staff changes. Yeah, I mean, that's sure, like 100%. All I was saying is that, like, I don't think, like, assuming, money with NIL recruiting portal is a limited resource. Like, I would personally rather go get like a Jamie French than try to go all in on these transfers for like a 1-year rental to just try to win in 25. Like, I think you actually have kind of a decent high school foundation that you're building upon. I don't think you need to like turn your back on that.
We absolutely do. So last two guys we're going to talk about, both 3 stars. I know everyone's like, oh man, why are we looking at the 3 stars? I do think one of them I'm not so high on. Daniel Pierre-Louis. I did say I think he's probably the most likely to be the next commit. FSU guy. My biggest thing that I'm actually excited about, I mean, I'll take anyone from FSU, So, I mean, their class is now worse than ours, which if you would have told an FSU fan 2 months ago that Florida would have a higher class than you right now, oh my goodness, they'd be – I guess they already are freaking out, but because they're 1-9 record. But they'd be freaking out even more then. So it's like FSU's at an all-time low, really. So Daniel Pierre-Louis, all right. Depth, I guess, on the offensive line. But the guy I really like, the one you thought might be the next commit, who still might be, maybe we did convince him. We've seen players say they're still going to take visits and then still commit. Stephon Shivers. I mean, this is a big kid right here. I mean, he's hit the weight room. That's an understatement, really. I can't pull up the photo on here, but I mean, there's just a photo of him. It's like, I mean, I don't know how you could say no to that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and a guy who's, not the highest rated guy. And I don't like, I'm not here to say like recruiting rankings are meaningless, because I don't think that's true. But I certainly would say I put more credence in who's pursuing you and who has offered you. And, he has offers from teams like Georgia, teams like Auburn. So,
decommitted from Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, you decommitted from Georgia. So, I think that when even if you're barely a top 500 guy, at the end of the day, like, if Kirby Smart sees something in you that he likes, the odds are there's probably something pretty good there. I think that's a pretty safe bet to make.
Definitely is. Hopefully throughout the week we'll be able to break some major recruiting news. I know during some people don't like to say off season. It can get a little bit more boring, but then recruiting is the thing that keeps everyone engaged 24/7. But also during the season, it's nice to have those breaking news. We are 17 days away from signing day, December 4th. I mean, if it's going to turn around, it's going to turn around fast. I don't know if I've ever seen a turnaround on a recruiting trail that we could possibly have happen like in that snap. So I'm hoping for it. I bet you're hoping for it. And we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ways these next few weeks could play out, but certainly more intrigue and excitement than I thought the Gators would be capable of just a few weeks ago.
Definitely. It's time to make picks for Florida. Well, not time to make picks yet, but we'll get to our picks soon now. I mean, Florida Ole Miss, we're going to break it down, predict it. Very tough game for me. Bit easier for you. Where do you want to start with this one?
I just want to say, I'll say what I said to you when we were off air, that I do think this is the best. This is potentially the best team Florida's played this year. And I think it is potentially the toughest matchup for Florida. I think the teams that you've seen Florida have success against are, teams like Georgia that are, just straight up struggling on offense. They didn't as much last night. Maybe they've sort of gotten their stuff together again on that side of the ball, but had a really rough stretch offensively. Kentucky, nightmarish offensively. UCF having a lot of issues. And even LSU has sort of recently struggled. This Ole Miss team, I think, is pretty complete across the board. Maybe not the best like rushing offense, but I think Jackson Dart's having a really good season. I mean, has been statistically the best quarterback in the SEC this year.
Yeah.
I think that defensively they can do things up front that certainly LSU can't. I mean, I think this front four will probably be kind of maybe alongside like a Texas or Georgia, the toughest that the Gators have played this year. So I don't want to rain on the parade here. Like, I think that Florida has taken significant strides, and I come into this game thinking that they have a real chance to win, which I didn't think was the case not too long ago. I do think, though, like, I want to caution in being like, everything's fixed, we beat LSU. Like, yep. LSU is a team, like, I've followed this team for a while now, covering them with my previous job. But like, I think that this has kind of been a steady collapse for them over these last few weeks. And so that's why, even though I picked LSU, I'm certainly not shocked that Florida won that game. I would be a lot more surprised if Florida comes out and plays well enough to win this game. Though, again, I don't think they're going to get killed. I don't think this is going to be an embarrassing beatdown like the Miami and A&M games were. Mm-hmm. I still think it's a big ask for where this program's at right now, and more importantly, what they're missing.
I'm going to ask. Last week, you said in a close game, based on coaching, you'd favor LSU, but based on players, you'd favor Florida. How do you look at that in this Florida Ole Miss game? Jackson Dart, he's a good QB. I'm not going to discredit him for anything. But like, we haven't really seen him win. Their two closest games were their losses. They lost to LSU in overtime, and they lost 20-17 to Kentucky. Can Jackson Dart handle the pressure of a close game if Florida can keep it close?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit of a different dynamic because I think LSU we had seen kind of survive and win some close games this year. They did it against South Carolina. They did it against Arkansas, sort of to an extent. Yeah, Ole Miss, obviously Ole Miss. So I think that's a little bit different. I mean, I will say, like, Ole Miss, you're right. They've, in a few different situations this year, they've had opportunities to close out games and haven't been able to do it. I mean, Kentucky, like, just incredibly unlikely way to lose a game. I mean, you give up 50 yards on a 4th and 7, like, to set up. I mean, game would have been over if you just knocked that ball down.
That's true.
And then LSU, I mean, they led that game pretty much the entire way.
They literally led it every single second of that game. There was not a second they were trailing in that game.
Yeah. So, they've definitely squandered a lot of games, and that, like, I think this team is good enough to be undefeated right now. Like, I think this team, like, I don't consider it a disappointment in a way, because I think at its best, it's looked as good as advertised. We just haven't necessarily seen it at its best all the time. So I would maybe say it's almost the reversal. Like, I think Ole Miss is clearly the more talented team, but I will say, like, maybe I do now have a little bit more faith in the Gators with DJ Lagway. I mean, we've seen DJ Lagway, clutch drive to send the game against Tennessee to overtime. Obviously helped finish the game out yesterday. So I think you could maybe make that case, although I still do think talent-wise, this is a significant step up from LSU.
What would you say Ole Miss's weakness? Just a quick answer. What is Ole Miss's weakness on offense?
I think their ability to run the ball. They lost a lot with Quinshon Judkins leaving.
So like their offensive line in general, really?
Yeah, you could probably say that.
I mean, what would you say Florida's strength is right now on defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, getting pressure on the quarterback. Yeah.
That might be the story of this game. If Florida can get enough pressure to make Jackson Dart make some mistakes, not be able to sit comfortably in the pocket and make those easy, I won't say easy throws, but make those throws that Lane Kiffin can make open for him with his scheme. That's really the textbook place for this Ole Miss offense, is just letting Jackson Dart be comfortable, not do anything crazy. And maybe we saw last year, actually, or the year before, Jackson Dart did have some good plays against LSU. They beat him last year in a high-scoring game. So we have seen Dart have some big clutch moments. But has he done it against a defensive line like ours that 7 sacks in this previous game? Don't really count Texas for too much. Got pressure on Carson Beck, ton of pressure on Kentucky, ton of pressure on UCF. And this Ole Miss offensive line has been hurt, so you can give it a little bit of credit. And they got a bit healthier. We saw against Georgia. Their offense, Georgia's a really good defense. So scoring 28 points on Georgia you can celebrate that, like, as much as you can celebrate really anything in college football. So give them credit there. But it's not necessarily the best offense in the country that like we would expect from Ole Miss. I think their offense has been way more disappointing. Well, their defense hasn't been disappointing at all. It's been spectacular, actually. But their offense has been probably disappointing. I mean, if their offense plays better against Kentucky, they can't score only 17 points against Kentucky. I mean, we scored 49 against them. I mean, 23 points against this LSU defense. And we see it LSU maybe not be the best defense. I mean, I think you still can worry about that Ole Miss offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to come out and drop like 40 points in this game. I certainly don't think that's about to happen. I do just worry a little bit about, like, I think Florida's still vulnerable in the secondary, right? I think we saw that a little bit, on the one play where Aaron Anderson kind of just got behind everybody on their sort of one big play touchdown. But the fact of the matter is LSU doesn't really have that vertical threat at receiver. They kind of have one in Chris Hilton, who's back into the fold after injury earlier in the year, and he had deep ball right in his hands in the end zone and dropped it. So I think that there is the potential there for big plays for Ole Miss. And I think LSU just really has struggled to capitalize on that this year because they don't run the ball and they don't have a Malik Neighbors and they don't have a Brian Thomas Jr. anymore who can really just take the top off the defense. So, and I think, between guys like Trey Harris, Juice Wells, like I think Ole Miss maybe can do that. So that would be my concern. I agree with you. I think we have the chance to get a lot of pressure on Jackson Dart and cause some havoc, and he will turn the ball over. He's proven throughout his career he's prone to turn the ball over. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the defense get a pick or something, a pick or two in this game, and kind of get some chaos the way they did against Nussmeier. That's just what I worry about, is just getting kind of the top taken off you, and LSU couldn't really do that.
I'm going to assume Trey Harris plays in this game. I know he's been hurt throughout this past month or so.
Yeah, he's been banged up for a while.
They've had the bye week though. I don't think he played against Georgia, did he?
I don't believe so, but I don't quote me on that.
But I think with the bye week, Lane might have something to prove against Florida. That Trey Harris is going to be back. The next thing I want to question about this Ole Miss defense. This is probably the best Ole Miss defense we've seen since they had Hugh Freeze. What passing offense have we seen Ole Miss play? LSU?
Yeah, that's a fair point. LSU's probably the best one. You're looking at Georgia, which it can be good. They were good yesterday. Beck had a really good game last night. He bounced back nicely. So, but yeah, you're right about that for sure. I don't know if I'd call Florida a great passing offense, though, at this point. I think it's one that's capable of doing good things, but it's not consistently good is kind of my problem.
And with the pressure, the key to this game might just be if Lagway can be healthy enough to scramble, avoid a sack from Princely, avoid a sack from Walter Noah, and avoid pressure from JP Piguez. And the linebackers, Sertain Perkins, they bringing him on delayed blitz. He's really good at that. Former 5-star kid. And Chris Paul, their leading tackler. Yeah. So there's definitely things that they're going to have to avoid. And if Lagway is as immobile, LSU, I'm pretty sure, was top 10 in the country in sack rate success going into that game. And they had 0 on Lagway. But Ole Miss is obviously a more talented pass rushing unit. They're going to convert on at least a couple of them, especially if Lagway is still as immobile as he was. I also do want to see how Florida can run the ball against Ole Miss because, on a per yards basis, we were good against LSU, good against Texas, good against Georgia. The run game has been really solid throughout this past, 2 months maybe. So got to give them a bit of credit there. I think it's going to be a really fun matchup there to see. Especially the team against Princely. He transferred away. Big storyline. The Georgia game was ETN transferring away to a rival. Now we have the big storyline of Princely transferring to not necessarily a rival, but a team on the schedule still. So I wonder if the offensive line is going to have something to prove against him. the running backs might have something to prove against him, because one of his biggest flaws or gripes that Gator fans had was his run defense not necessarily being that good. It's been better graded-wise at Ole Miss, so maybe he has improved, or I don't know, maybe things have just gone differently at Ole Miss to where it looks better. But it will be interesting to see that matchup, especially in the run game.
Yeah, and I was going to say you kind of hit on it, like even a little bit there. But Princely, also a guy who took his fair share of criticism from Gator fans,
Yep.
So maybe it's personal in both, a little bit in both directions there. Certainly interesting. I mean, I think we'll kind of get an idea of who had the who got the last laugh there. You know what I mean? Prince is having a nice season. We'll just kind of see. Florida. I think. With Trevor Etienne, I mean, I saw a stat comparison today, like Jaden Ball and Trevor Etienne have identical numbers, basically. So
they're one less yard for Ball.
Yeah.
They had the same carries, same touchdowns, one less yard for Ball. That's impressive.
He wasn't the primary running back for the first half of the season.
Etienne also has missed like 3-4 games this year.
He has. But I think, I don't think they're necessarily missing that kind of production. So
no,
we'll kind of see if we get our own version of that with Princely, like getting held to 2 tackles and no sacks or something like that.
That would be nice, but it's time for you to make your prediction. What do you got?
Oh man, I hate to do this. I really hate to do this because I've been so negative throughout this season. And I actually am kind of coming around. Like I still have my questions, but I can see the vision. Like I'm starting to be optimistic. I can see the vision. I think they're going to beat FSU and go to a bowl game, which I think is huge. I just think this one is a little bit too tough of an ask. And if Ole Miss had just gotten killed by Georgia or something like that, I'd probably be talking a little bit differently about this. But I'm more impressed with Ole Miss than I was a couple weeks ago. And I just think it's a little bit much right now for a team that I think is mostly just kind of operating on like good vibes and energy sort of at the moment. Like I hate to say that, but it's kind of a power of friendship type team right now with all the injuries that they have. I think maybe that luck runs out a bit here. I don't think they get killed. I think it's a close game. I'll say like Ole Miss pulls away with a late touchdown to win like 31-20.
31-20. Could this game be first to 30 points? I mean, I don't really like doing that, but I mean, it might be. I have Florida 30-27. Okay. We just haven't seen this Ole Miss team win those close games. And if Florida can make this a close game, I mean, Lagway's won them. I mean, even Kentucky, like we won it by 28 points. It was a 14-point game in the fourth quarter. So we saw him make the big plays to pull away. Saw against LSU, made the big plays to take the lead in the fourth quarter and call a ball game on them. So I'm going to take the Gators and to pull the upset. And we're going to – if we beat Ole Miss, I don't want to say we're going to beat LSU, but I mean FSU, sorry. Would a 7-5 Florida team be ranked? Because you're looking at,
certainly high in receiving votes. I'd say probably not, but I wouldn't completely rule it out.
Go based off the playoff committee? Receiving votes?
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. I think if you had gotten Tennessee, you're looking at a top 20.
Oh, we would
easily
losses. Be ranked. Yeah,
he's not even saying ranked. I'm saying you're looking at like the number 18 team in the country at 84. But yeah.
We'd be like, people are looking at South Carolina right now with 9-3 and being like, they should be in the playoff. But
and you know what? They got robbed in that LSU game, by the way.
They did.
That roughing the passer call might have ruined their season. Like might have cost them a shot at the playoff, which is pretty brutal.
Even that, man, looking back at that Alabama game is so weird. Because honestly, the team looked like Lenora Sellers, I don't know, he was hurt still. They kind of looked like they gave up. And they were just like lucking their way to getting the onside kick and keeping the game where they could have won it. I mean, that's such a weird game to look back on because now you see the team look all fired up. And maybe they might be a top 10 team. Like if you put them against top 10 teams, I'd favor them over some other ones. So we talked about it with Tennessee yesterday. So.
Yeah, no, they're as hot as I think they look as hot as like anyone in the country right now. Their defense is insane and the offense is really starting to come along. Glad we don't play them this year.
Lenora Sellers is also a freshman.
Red shirt, right?
Probably. He might be one that, like, he's had 300-something yards against Missouri. I mean, he might be one of the best names to compare to Lagway for who are the best QBs in next season.
Yeah, which I don't think anyone had Lenora Sellers on their radar there, but credit to them.
Especially after his first game against Old Dominion, they looked horrible.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit of basketball real quick. Team gets a big win against FSU. Did you watch the game?
Yeah, I was sort of in and out. I was able to watch like a decent, like about half of it, probably all in all.
Man, the officiating in that game was pretty bad. I don't know, like if you watched enough to really tell, but I felt like the officiating near the end there, it kind of felt like they were just trying to keep FSU in it. There was like 6 straight possessions to where there would be a lot of contact on Florida, nothing would get called, which I don't mind if it's, but then FSU would get like the smallest contact called for them. In Tallahassee, you're going to complain about away refs. But I mean, this week, 2 bye games. Florida A&M, who's 0-3, played them on Tuesday, should be a win. Southern Illinois, Friday, 7, should be a win. But then that next week, Florida plays in the ESPN Events Invitational Semi-Florida Tournament. Wake Forest just got really embarrassed by Xavier. I don't know if you saw this or not. Wake Forest.
I did not see that. I saw they beat Michigan a couple days ago. I didn't know they lost to Xavier.
I don't think Wake Forest beat. They did. Oh, wow. Yeah, so they beat Michigan 72-70, and they were like 30th in the KenPom rankings. They then played USC Upstate. They won that game 85-80. They dropped like 30, 40 spots in KenPom rankings after that game.
Jeez.
And then they got beat by 15 points to Xavier. That game started at 12 on Saturday. I was at a Texas Roadhouse, actually. And I was watching that game. Wake Forest just doesn't look good. It also makes you question how bad Michigan really is if they lose to Xavier. But I feel like that's a game that Florida should really easily win.
Now, I think you got the potential for a nice start here with that and the Virginia game coming up.
Well, they also – so it's a tournament. Well, if we beat Wake Forest, we play the winner of Minnesota, who just lost to North Texas. I think it was North Texas.
Not sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Minnesota, I think they lost to North Texas, and they also play Wichita State, and this isn't the same Wichita State team of old. So then you're looking at we're at 4-0 right now. Yeah, 4-0, 6-0 going to Wake Forest. Hopefully get 2 more wins. That's 8-0. And then Virginia is just not good. I mean, that's 2 games that we're looking for revenge. Wake Forest beat us last year. So did Virginia.
Without both of those games, Virginia beat us without Zion Pullen.
And Wake Forest beat us without Micah Handglotton as well. And that was really true. We should have beat Virginia. Walter Clayton choked free throws at the end of that game. Yeah. Something that he just doesn't do. But then, honestly, Arizona State's probably the toughest matchup before we played North Carolina. Arizona State gave Gonzaga a good game, and Gonzaga looks really good. So, I mean, you're looking at getting maybe 4 quad 2 wins, maybe 4 quad 2 wins, which should be nice going into that North Carolina game, looking at like 9 or 10-0. Be a big game. I mean, hopefully we're looking at just at worst of 1-loss Florida team going to SEC play. Florida's first 3 SEC games at Kentucky, who looking really good. They're probably going to be inside the top 10 when the new poll comes out. Versus Tennessee, home against Tennessee. Number 11 team looks really good. At Arkansas, number 18 team right now. Those are 3 straight quad 1 games. They're guaranteed to be quad 1 games, in my opinion, by the end of the season. Because Arkansas, they looked a little bit iffy. But it's a road game, so they just got to stay inside the top 75. But, I mean, hey, this team, I mean, even with the Todd Golden controversies going on, seems like it's not as bad as we thought. I mean, hopefully we're looking at a basketball team that can just maybe jump into the top 15. Maybe if they win some of those games, the top 10.
Yeah, and I'm excited now that Urban Klavzar, the Slovenian guy, Slovenian kid, not a transfer, I guess, but a sophomore enrollee from professional basketball in Slovenia, had a hang up with the NCAA, finally cleared, made his debut against FSU. Not a huge impact. I think they're kind of working him in slowly, but I'm excited to see what the potential is there because potentially a game-breaking offensive player.
He is. Didn't get many minutes against FSU.
So because he came in and took 2 quick fouls.
That's right. Yeah. Gotta
Or
get
picked
used
up.
to,
I should say picked up two quick fouls.
yeah, gotta get used to less lenient referees compared to
Yeah.
overseas, as they would say.
Yeah.
So, but do you have any final thoughts on the show? Maybe the Ole Miss game or the LSU game?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that overall, kind of looking at those two as one, like I think Florida has really done a good job of changing the narrative here. This has been a weird season. This has
Really
been
has.
one of the narratively just roller coaster biggest seasons. Like it's been a very strange year to watch the Gators. But I kind of sit here feeling pretty good, and I think you have a huge opportunity in front of you. So I would just say, like, I think there's an element of playing with house money at this point for the Gators, just because it seems like they're pretty much planning like fully to run this back. And I think Saturday's win all but locked up the fact that we're running this back. So I think it's just an opportunity to really like dictate what the terms are going to be, dictate how people are going to be talking about you for the next 9 months. And you could do it. You could close these games out in a way that it's really positive, the way that people are talking about you.
Absolutely. Well, we hope to see you guys in the middle of the week with some big recruitment news. Maybe one of the 5 stars will pop, probably not during this week. But, I mean, maybe we'll get lucky. Probably get 1 or 2 commits during the week. I hope everyone has a great week, and go Gators.